So Alhamdulillah, Assalamualaikum and very good morning to all. We already have received at present 93 participants from UTeM as well as from outsiders. We also have here Prof. Dr. Hayati Abdullah from UTeM. Welcome, Prof. And also welcome to all participants from UTeM. And today, I'm sure that everyone is looking forward to our webinar session today. By the way, I'm Jariah, Mohamad Juoi from CAES as your moderator today. So today we have our session entitled Instruction Design for Online Content. And we have a very expert speakers, okay, and the most suitable person to talk about this, which is Dr. Zulisman Maksom. Okay, Dr. Zulisman is a lecturer from FTMK, Faculty of Information, Communication and Technology, as well as the director for Pusat Sumber dan Teknologi Pengajaran, Center for Teaching Technology and Resources, UTeM. So, but today he will talk focusedly on instructional design for online content. Okay, Doctor, let me introduce Dr. Zulisman first. Okay, Dr. Zulisman has first degree in Graphic Design and Technology from University College of Learning, UCOL, Wanganui Polytechnic, New Zealand. Is it? Okay. And then he obtained his master in Design and Manufacture in Multimedia Design and Manufacturing from De Montfort University, Leicester, UK. And he obtained his Doctor of Design in 2012 in the discipline of Graphic and Communication Design Technology from Swinburne University of Technology, Melbourne, Australia. So he has very vast experience in designing, and also he has joined UTeM since 2003, right, Dr. Zulisman?
That's correct.
So at present, I'm sure he's very busy, occupied with all those e-learning content development, e-learning guidelines, and so on. And he is a good reference for us. So I invite all participants to share if you have any clarifications, need further clarification, please just ask during this session, because this session could be a two-way interaction. Just unmute your mic and raise the question to Dr. Zulisman, and we can share his, we can get his opinion on that. Okay, without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Zulisman to start with our session.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Video saya nampak ke muka saya? Tak ada kan?
Nampak.
Okay, thank you very much to Professor Madia, Dr. Jariah, being our moderator this morning. Thank you very much for Professor Dr. Faizah from CAES for inviting me to share a bit of, I'm not saying that I have vast knowledge actually, but, something that I can share from my industrial trainings and so on regarding about what we call it, the instructional design. Now, actually, I've been with Apple computers for 6 months in 2016. That's actually where I'm sort of like rigorously being trained to be the instructional designers, or proper instructional designers, on developing what we call it online content for SBT, Sekolah Berprestasi Tinggi lah, SBT at that time. So every day for the past 6 months I was traveling every day, to meet with the teachers, to meet with the expert and so on. So today actually I'm not going to go to the what we call it intermediate or advanced level. I'm just going to go to a very basic of what is instructional design mean for us as an academician. That is very important. But for me, to become an instructional designer is not that difficult actually. What we need is actually a bit of determination and understanding about who we are being as an instructors. I think that's more important. Sometimes when we are when we inviting an expert, in instructional design, they tend to complicate the ideas of how the online content need to be designed or need to be developed. But for me, I'm taking a slightly different approach in instructional design for online content. I prefer something that it can be understood by everybody, and it can be mastered in a very short time, rather than we are concentrating, too much on, too many learning theories, too many models that we need to understand on that part. Okay, let me try to share the slide. See whether I can move the slide or not. Okay, now let me look at the first slide before I start. This is where actually the what we have been doing actually, for the past 100 years, 200 years, 300 years probably. When schooling actually being considered as a formal education, formal process, the era of face-to-face learning, we have students actually that we need to look after. This is where actually we invited our group of students to participate in our class, to get the attentions, and this group of students is actually the one that actually what we're going to see them every day, and the role of the teachers at that time actually is at the center of the learning process. We bring books to school, we bring, all notes that available and so on. And, sometimes we carry so many materials into the classroom, and our students also start, learning the process of meeting us, right? But again, this process actually involve what we call it technologies, right? Behind of the what we call behind of the center of the attention, the teachers, is actually the technologies that we bring in. We have the slide, we have the PowerPoints and so on, and probably in this process the slide is about 10 years old. This is what we've been doing sometimes. Even nowadays, when we look at how some teachers entering the classroom with this kind of process, some of the teachers bringing 10 years old slides into the classroom, right? And that is the process, and that's the realities that what we've been seeing today. So basically, the process of face-to-face learning hasn't changed that much, right? The technologies that we embedded into the learning and teaching process is actually just in a process of substitution rather than we redefining how the technologies work. That is what basically we look at it. Now, so what we're looking at now is actually a different story, especially after this pandemics, after this COVID-19, people start realizing that actually technologies cannot, work that way, right? So we start changing the way how we perceive our roles, even though there's a lot of questions saying that kalau contohnya if the technologies is going to replace us, then the role of the teachers no longer valid, right? So that's what people say, but it doesn't happen that way in that sense. When we start become what we call it, if we no longer become the center of the process, when we start sitting behind of the process, our job is getting more and more. Our responsibility is actually getting bigger and bigger, rather than we sitting in front of the technologies, because of we start looking at how actually we're going to construct, how we're going to curate, and how actually we're going to develop the content that actually it will be able to speak on behalf of us. That's the question that we need to look at. And because of that, sometimes we do not understand that probably the teaching delivery is no longer the same, right? Kita tak boleh orang kata nak perceive that actually we sitting in front of the technology just like how we sitting in front of the classroom. So that is probably the paradigms that we need to change, and everybody have to change in the sense that you no longer be able to do that nowadays, especially. Okay. So far okay? Yang boleh faham? Any questions so far on that matters?
Okay, belum lagi ada question. Warm up.
Yeah? Okay, so let me go to the next slide. I'm trying to go to the next slide because of the network is bergerak tak slide saja? Because my slide macam lambat sikit.
Tak gerak, Doktor.
Tak ya?
It's the same slide.
Let me stop first and see what happened to the slide. Boleh nampak lah ya? Boleh nampak ya?
Boleh.
Okay lah, I buka macam ni je lah, senang sikit. Tak payah annotate lah. Sebenarnya saya cadang nak annotate. Alright, okay. Then, after the process, right? Nowadays when we're talking about the technologies that we're going to use, right? We start changing our roles actually. Instead of sitting in front of the students, we are actually standing behind of the technologies. So now the students actually seeing the technologies in front of them. And we ourselves actually need to master those type of technologies, the tools that we're going to use, whether it's going to be the traditional tools, ABMs, or actually it's going to be the advanced ABM tools. Now, when we start talking, when we start sitting behind of the technologies, the idea is about how to bring the ideas out of the box. Kita tak boleh kata we no longer can use our 10 years old PowerPoint slide to be presented in front of the technologies, inside of the technologies, and expecting the student to understand. We need what we call it a set of instructions. We have to know how actually we need to design those instructions that the student will be able to understand what we really want them to understand. So this is basically the changes that we need to do. Now, from my experience, most of the lecturers, most of the academicians are reluctant in doing this because of spending times and thinking out of the box about what you need to present in the classroom through the technology will definitely take a lot of effort. Right? You cannot replicate what you have from your book, from your PowerPoint slide or whatever you have, and presenting it in the way that actually you want to present. So that's why instructional design has become a crucial part when we start looking at online learning. This is where actually the challenge is going to come. But this challenge for me is just at the tips of the icebergs. The other challenge that we need to look at is how well versed we are in handling the technologies, how good we are in understanding the learning theories and also the fundamental of learning and teaching and learning. Previously, everybody know that, you know, the process that we need to do is teaching and learning, right? TNL, right? We teach and then the student learn. But nowadays with the technologies, we need to swap those to become learning and teaching. So we have to expect that the student must be independently learn from all the content that we created. And later on, that is where actually the process of teaching is happening. So now you have to reverse the idea of teaching and learning to become learning and teaching. We give the responsibility back to the student to learn before we're going to teach. This is basically the idea of behind of online learning. This is what we call it the flexible learning. You know, all this while, you know, some fundamentals that we use is that while I'm talking, you are listening. But nowadays in online learning, it doesn't happen that way. Communication happen in two ways, and we expect the student to be ready because of all the content is online, and that's where the flipped learning is going to happen. This process need to be understood by all the lecturers now. So then that's where actually this model that I always tell the lecturers, right? I love to use the SMR model. This is where the disruptive technology is coming in learning and teaching. Now, there's two portions of actually in SMR model. One is the enhancement process, and the other one is the transformation process. Now, I love to give an analogy in this process, you know, because of I'm going through a lot of what we call it traditional process of learning before. You know, I started my schooling in 1979. You know, where the technology is quite, we'll call it traditional. Now, let's say we take one simple thing, right? Being as a teacher. Let me go to the bottom part of where the technologies work. We call it substitutions, right? This is where actually the tech act as a direct tool substitute with no functional changes. This is actually the process that we've been doing until now, you know, since I'm young and until now. Remember this, you know. I remember when I was at my primary school, my teacher, you know, will use what we call it a stencil machine. Stencil machine is actually a replication machine. It's just like a photocopy machine, but you use by hand, you know. You have to work hard for it. You need to put an ink, and then you have to write all your content using papers, you know, because of there's no typewriter at that time. So the teachers are going to write on papers, one piece of paper, write every single note, every single diagram and everything. And after that, he will go into the stencil room, we call it, and he's going to replicate those notes, right? So they're going to use the stencil machine. So the smell, you can imagine, because of his blank ink at the time. And once they replicate that, you know, and they will distribute that into the student. Now, after that, technology is also coming in, you know, typewriters coming in. So the typewriter has become another tool or technologies that actually the teachers use. If previously the teachers need to write by hand, to, you know, to develop notes and to draw something, you know. So now the typewriter has been a technology that substitute the process of writing to become typing, you know, where there's a type. So, but the process of typing is also exactly the same, right? You are substituting the process only. So you go through the stencil machine again, and then you're replicating again all the materials and you're distributing to the students. Then from that, technology is coming in, computers coming in at that time, right? We're being introduced into computers, desktop computers at that time. So the typewriter has been replaced by the computers. We're doing exactly the same process. We type the notes, right, into the software, right? But we need to do a printing process. So we have the printer. So the stencil machine has been replaced by the printer. The typewriter has been replaced by the computers. But the process of doing it is still exactly the same. It does not change. Right? So then the technologies move forward where actually projectors has been introduced. So rather than actually you distributing your notes through a printout or handout material, so the teachers actually projecting whatever they do through the projectors, but the process is actually still exactly the same. So the technology has been used all over again for many years, exactly the same. There is no process that actually been cut down that actually make the process efficient, because of teachers still doing still typing the documents, still typing all the notes, whether using Word or whether using PowerPoints and so on. And after that, they go to the printer, they print it out, and after that, when they go to the classroom, they bring the thumb drive or they bring the computers and they just projecting it into the projectors. So it basically still the same. So the teachers is basically still at the center of the process, right? And that process actually exists up to date. So if we're talking about how actually the technology enhancing the process of learning and teaching, it does not happen actually. We believe it happened, but actually in terms of the process, it's not happening. It's still exactly the same process. So destructive technology in Industrial 4.0 should not work that way, right? The process that we need to look at actually, at least we are in the transformation process. So if we're talking about the transformation process, we're talking about the modification process, where the technologies allow for significant tasks that actually we need to redesign the process of how the learning and teaching need to happen. Now, the best part of this is actually if we as an academician be able to redefine the way how actually the learning and teaching process is going to happen. This is where actually the technology allow for the creation of new tasks, which is probably inconceivable, something that we never think. This is something that is out of the box. A simple thing that I always tell the student, especially to the lecturers, because I receive a lot of questions, especially from the lecturers who actually teach mathematics. How actually the technologies can be used when I'm going to teach mathematics, because of they believe that actually chalk and board is still the best way to deliver the teaching and learning, or learning and teaching. But actually there's a lot of other redefinition process that we can do. So we're going to talk that and discuss that later on if we have time. But today, if you're talking about what is instructional design, if you're talking about the fundamental behind of it, actually is very simple. It's just a process of taking information and how you're going to frame that in the way that it becomes interesting and it's easy to understand by the learner. That is the instructional design actually. So to understand those process, we as an academician, we as a lecturers or as a teachers, we need to understand our role. Our role is no longer delivering the content, but our role is to become the instructional designers, right? We're creating those content, we're curating those content. Okay. So today, if you're talking about instructional design, there's so many models that you can use, such as SAM models. There's so many other models. But today, I'm going to go through a very basic model that I use. I use AD model. I think everybody understands about AD model. This is probably the simplest model. Prof. Aizah, I know he loved this model, AD model. So, and today I'm going to talk about how instruction design based on AD model. There's so many other models. There's SAM model and there's more complicated model to be used. But usually when I'm looking at a basic of instructional design, I will start looking at the AD model. Right. Now, what is the AD model in instruction design? What is the role? Right. The first thing that actually we need to do is we need to analyze, right? So we have to analyze. We are not only analyzing the situation, but we are analyzing about ourselves. We're creating what we call it a self-reflection to ourselves. Imagine this, right? Now, everything needs to be delivered online. We don't have chance to meet the student like what happened today. So we have to ask a question to ourselves, how I'm going to meet my student virtually. But at the same time, I want them to feel that what I'm going to deliver to them is exactly the same as how I want it, right? Because we don't have chance to see them face to face. If you have chance to see the student face to face, it's a different story, because you can see the student in front of you, they can see you and they can ask you so many questions. But now The issues is that you don't have those privilege to see them face to face. What you have is actually the technologies that will help you to deliver what you want them to be delivered, right? So because of now the student is actually sitting in front of the technologies. They are handling their mobile phone, they are using their laptop, they're using their desktop, they're using their tablet, and they're expecting that actually what you need to deliver is something that actually comes from you. So this is the first phase of the instructional design process, which is arguably the most important thing. We need to analyze those processes. At the same time, you also need to analyze about whether the student understand or not this process. Are they feel comfortable to be in front of the technologies without seeing you, right? Who they are actually. We are also need to analyze about in terms of their literacy, our literacy in using the technologies. We also need to look at other process such as the accessibility into the technology itself, because of surprisingly, our young generation nowadays, we are talking about the Gen Z. We Gen Y is already passing. Now it's Gen Z. Surprisingly, our students are very good in handling their smart devices or their mobile devices or their computers in doing other things such as Instagram, social media, and so on. But surprisingly, they are lack in handling the way how actually they are gaining information or searching information online. They are not know how actually use Google search even. They do not know how to use Google Translate even, to find things. So this is something that you need to analyze. So this process requires us as an academician to also understand those processes. So now, to do that, the analysis need to take place at the first, right? Now, the second part is actually design. This is where actually we start, we call it prototyping, or what we call it sketching our ideas, right? What kind of things you want to deliver. So during this phase, actually, you take everything that you learn during analysis phase and start doing a planning. You start structuring how actually the content need to be delivered. This is very important. Do I need to deliver the whole content like in the textbook? Do I need to deliver the content just like what the PowerPoint slide is going to say? Or actually I need to create something else to capture the essence of the content itself. This is very important. So this is include about understanding on what learning activities that I'm going to introduce into the online learning, into my content. What kind of activities I want my student to participate? What kind of assessment do I need to curate? Because what kind of learning outcome I want to achieve today? What kind of learning outcome, what kind of understanding I want to capture from my students, right? Do I need to create visual rather than text? Right? Do I need to understand how actually the front end of my page that actually represent me? So what kind of documents that actually I need to put in, right? So it's basically like you creating a storyline. This is on the design process in edit models that I think everybody start to look at. Yes, when we start talking about this process, because they, everybody will start talking about, do I have time or not to think of this, why it's so tedious doing this kind of thing. But this is the process that actually you cannot run away. That's what I said just now at the beginning. When you are behind of the technology, actually you have more works to do rather than you just at the front of the technology. Because when you are at the front of the technology, macam saya kata tadi, 10 tahun punya slide pun masih lagi valid. But when you start sitting behind of the technology, when the technology become your representative, you need to talk more. You need to think more, you need to analyze, and you need to design more. This is something that actually we need to understand. And it's not an easy process, but along the way, through practice and through understanding, you will get it through. I believe on that. The third one is actually the development process. So in the development process, this is where actually we start what we call it from the story, from the concept that we do in the second process, this is where actually you start putting it, you start doing a curating process, you start creating the content. In online learning, there is two words that actually you need to do. One is actually to create, and the other one is to curate the content. Creating a content because of you want the content to be suitable to your target audience, to your student, to your class. Sometimes you cannot simply take from online or from anything that available. Sometimes you can do, but you start talking about developing the content. Probably you start recording the videos. Probably you start developing other content. Right? Then the second process that you need to do is you curating it. Just like the museum curator, right? You start curating the artifacts. Which one need to come first, which one need to come later in the process. So this is actually very important, because of if the curating process is not happening, then actually the learning process also will become haywire. So student might not understand the step that actually you're putting in. So the development phase in this instructional design process actually is to materialize your storyboard, to create what we call it a curation and creating content which is suitable to your target audience. Now, I cannot specifically say that actually every curation and creation is similar, because it depends on the courses that actually you teach. Mathematics course will be different, history course will be different, programming courses will be different, engineering courses will be different. So this is actually where the creativity comes in. And everybody start asking me also at the same time, can I be a creative person in understanding this? So later on, we can have a Q&A how actually we to go there. Right? So this phase is also involved about testing it, and look at the look and the feel of your content. Does it capture the essence? Does it capture the attention of the student? Do they understand or not, about your instruction just now? When you're talking about online learning, online content development, the first thing that you have to know is that, does your student understand the instructions that you give to them online? Right? For example, like you want them to write 5,000 words of short report. Do they understand what is 5,000 words of report? No. Now, if they come back to you and start asking you again that they do not understand those instructions, it means your instructional design is still not correct. Right? You're still not designing it correctly. So that is basically in the instructional design rules. Number 4 is implementation process in the EDI model. This is the phase where the course is uploaded into your learning management. Just now, you are curating it, you putting it, you're developing it, you record the videos, you do the screen captures, you're adding audio in your PowerPoints, saving it, put it into the folder. And now this is the implementation. This is where actually you start understanding about your LMS, your learning management system. Each university will have a different LMS. UPSI, they will have my guru, if I'm not mistaken. They have a different way. Most of the university awam dekat Malaysia, they are using Moodle based, so it's almost similar. This is where actually you start curating the content. You start doing a structure into your content. What need to come first? What need to come later on? And what do you want to put in? This is very important. Okay, so this is actually where you understand whether the learners just now, whether the student will be able to access into your content or not. And at this stage, the most important aspect that we need to look at in instructional design is to make sure that the accessibility into your content can be fairly accessed by the rest of other students. So in this process, we go back to the analysis process just now. You need to find out how many students actually are able to access to your content because of the 5G network or the 4G network. What happened to the student who have lower bandwidth network, for example, like 2G, 2.5 or 3G network? What kind of data that actually they will be able to access? Because you want to get you want to make sure the fairness of accessing into your content. And the last one is basically the evaluation. This is where actually you start evaluating whether the curation and the creation of your content just now actually meet the objective of those particular courses. So after the implementation, at the end of the semester, you start looking at it. And this is where actually the improvement can be done every semester into your courses, especially to the lecturers or to the teachers who actually teach exactly the same courses. You actually need to evaluate whether your content can be improved from semester to semester. Now, remember this, when we're meeting with the students, every semester that we meet the student, we cannot expect that you're going to meet exactly the same group of students. This year, probably the cognitive level of the student is slightly higher. The next semester, probably you will receive the student who their cognitive level is slightly lower. So you have to understand on evaluating your content that you're going to replicate or you're going to restore from the previous semester, whether it is suitable or not to be used for this particular group of students. So this is where the evaluation need to come. So basically the process of instructional design in your content need to happen almost every semester. That is where actually the hard work that you need to do. Okay, so now as a newcomer into instructional design, right? We call it teacher. I like to call ourselves as a teacher, even though some people don't like to call us as a teacher. But at the end of the day, we're still a teacher, isn't it? So if you're a newcomer to the field of e-learning or instructional design, you might feel overwhelmed by the amount of information available online. There are so many, right? People giving different ideas, people giving different opinions and so on, right? And different learning theories being embedded into. People will have a different way to do. But where we need to start, because when there are too many information available online, sometimes we get confused. How actually, which one is suitable for us. But for me, the first thing that we need to look at is only 3 words, right? To make the content effective, to make the content interesting, and to make your content engaging to your learners. Because of if these 3 can be tackled as a newcomer, that is the starting point for you to move to the intermediate level or advanced level in curating and creating your content through the instructional design process. Now, anyone can create e-learning project, but the skill of instructional designers that I go here, build an e-learning that meets the learning objective and need of the audience. That's why every time when we want to create an curating content, when we start embedding this, the main important thing is that we need to understand the learning objective of your courses. Now, most of universities, even in UTeM, our courses actually kita ada, we call it a learning outcome, right? 3 learning outcomes usually, which actually covers a different taxonomy, the CAP, the cognitive, affective, psychomotor, and also the soft skill. But when we start developing online content through a process of, we call it session process, some university call it session process. In UTeM, we call it weekly because we have weekly process. We need to understand, for example, like, okay, let me go to one good example, a simple example. Multimedia subject, for example. This is from FTMK, right? Our student is first year student, first semester student, or a second semester student, and they are undertaking a courses called multimedia system. Okay, the first topic of the week is actually the definition of multimedia. Now, how actually, now what kind of learning objective you want to achieve on that particular session of that particular week? What do you want the student to understand about the definition of multimedia system? So by doing that, you are looking at what kind of weekly learning outcomes that actually you need to achieve. So previously we have the course learning outcome, CLO. Now you have the weekly learning outcome, WLO, or whatever you call it. That is very important. That is the first thing that you need to develop. And the second thing is actually what is the need of the audience on that particular session. You have to look back at the analysis process that you have been creating. Who is your student? Are they actually from SPM level student? Are they from matriculation student, or are they from Form 6 student, or are they from diploma student, right? So there are different students in that group. So as everybody understand, students learn in a different way. Some students learn through visual, some students learn from psychomotor, some students learn from auditory system, and so on. So we have to understand those processes, and we have to cater as much as to this particular student. So the basic of ID in online content is, number one, you need to know your audience. Okay? Ask yourself and ask your client, who are your learners and what are their needs? This is very important. Okay? Are they computer savvy, as I said, or are they completely non-technical? Now, when we're asking about computer savvy and non-technical, we are not only asking about the audience, but we're also asking about ourselves. So that's why in the instructional design process, actually, some people thought that actually we need to embed as many elements as we can, but actually that's wrong. Right? That perception is wrong. Actually, we have to go back to our capabilities in handling the technologies. And if it's too overwhelmed, there's too many elements that you need to cover, then somehow you might slow down your process of understanding of instruction design process. So how much do they already know about the topic at hand? This is very important, because of when we start delivering a content online, the main important thing is to understand the gist of those particular topic. You don't put everything in, because online learning and online process, the way how we develop the content is we need to have two-way communication. First, we want the student to learn prior to entering the online courses, prior to entering the classes, for example. So this is where the free classroom happens. So how many percent the student understand about the topic, right? How do you want them to prepare before they entering your class, right? And this is also another thing that you need to do. Saya pernah nampak, I've seen that the lecturer try to put as many as they can into their content, but actually that's wrong, right? We have to understand how much content you want it to put in. Okay. Then number two that we need to do is separate between to know and how to know process. Okay, so this is the process that actually you need to look at. Okay. Separate need to know from nice to know. Okay, when you're deciding on need to know from nice to know. When you're deciding what information to include in your course, you have to ask yourself, does the information actually critical to be put in, or actually that can be used in a different section where the student need to explore themselves? Okay. Will the learner ever need to know this to do their job? So that is also another basic that you need to know. If they do not know, what will be the impact into your learning outcome on that particular section? That's also important. So basically, you don't put everything in, but you need to understand what actually they need to know and what actually things that they need to nice to know. Additional information we call it, right? That's the process. And then the other one is follow the basic course structure, right? Each of the course curriculum, each of the curriculum will have their own basic course structure. Just follow that. Right now, the important part being as an online learning is actually everybody know that actually the student is not going to meet you. How you want the student to feel comfortable with you? First, we need to have a basic things. Right? Previously, if you are in front of the student, you can say, hi everyone, my name is this. I'm going to be your teachers, or I'm going to be your instructors for this semester. But that privilege no longer with you when you're doing online. So how actually you're going to introduce yourself? How are you going to welcome your student into your course? Right? This is very important. And what kind of basic instruction you want them to know? For example, like if you are running PTG, for example, pembelajaran teradun gantian, how many percent actually you want the student to understand about it? What expectation you want the student to understand from your online courses? What you want to tell them about these online courses, right? That's also important. The other one is introduction to the learners, right? What is the course is all about? What is the benefit they're going to get when they are joining the courses online, right? So all those introduction. This is basically a course summary. What is the objective, the overall objective of your courses, and also the content that you need to develop. So this is a basic thing that you need to follow. Okay, and what is the assessment, what the summaries, and what the exit process that you need to do. So you can look at it. So later on, you can ask the question. For me, it's simple. This is probably the last slide that after this, I'm going to go for Q&A. So the tips is very simple, right? When we do the instructional design in the process, when you're curating the content, a lot of actually lecturers tend to put all the information in one page. That is too overwhelming. So you need to use whatever meaningful elements that you need to put in. If you want to put pictures, or you want to put a diagram, or you want to put a chart, or you want to put an images that give an impact, you make sure that actually the image that you put in really give an impact and dia melekat dekat kepala our learners tadi. It brings the attention to them. You don't put small images, 10 of them in one single page on your online content, and you're expecting the student to understand about the images that you put. Sometimes you just put one big images and they will understand what meaning. That is important. The other one is design a distraction-free template. We love using templates, right? Our PowerPoints, usually we just choose whatever template. We try to follow that template because we believe the template is beautiful, and we try to follow the template. But as much as we can, sometimes the template of our process of our content is too much, and it's quite distracting. And 90% of what you create as an e-learning developer is actually distracting. You put too many colors into your content. You highlighted the text in different colors because you believe that when you're highlighting the text is actually giving attention to the student. But remember this thing. Now, previously I saw this one particular slide where actually the teachers highlighting every single point of the word in the slide, for example, or in their online content with different colors, from red to green to blue to purples, to cyan, to yellow, to orange, and so on. Now, it looks beautiful in the eyes of us as a developer, but we tend to forgotten actually that by doing that, actually we create a distraction into our student eyes. That's why ramai student kita yang rabun, right? Disebabkan oleh sometimes from the young age, when they are in the primary school, we as a teacher, we love to give too many colors, and because of those colors make them fatigue. Too many colors actually can create fatigue in our concentration. Now, remember about the theory of colors, color theory. Colors travel into our eyes in a different speed, just like light. This is a biology, if everybody remember. We learn biology, we learn about the eye anatomy. Our eyes see object because of light. That's why if we are totally in the dark, you don't see an object. You cannot perceive an object. You cannot see the colors. You cannot tell anything. But if you have light, you start be able to differentiate object, the distance, the colors, the shape, and also the characters of the object because of light. Now, light travel into our eyes in a different speed. That's why when we see people with red color, right, they're wearing a red shirt, or they're wearing a red tudung, that particular person will become our first attention because red color travel faster than the other colors. So because of that, when we start putting too many colors in our content, actually you create a distraction itself into the content that you're going to deliver, because the student actually juggling between colors to colors. right? So we have to be careful with that. I can talk about colors, color theory in online learning 3-4 hours if if you can, but I don't have time. But if anybody want to learn about colors and how it affect the learning process, probably we can have other session later on. Okay. Now the other one is we have to make sure that there is enough white space in our content delivery, right? We've been given whether it's on LMS, whether we are developing PowerPoints, whether we're developing whatever you want to develop in terms of the materials on your part. In the instructional design process, you have to make sure that there is enough white space. Now, our culture is quite, I don't call it bizarre. Our culture is quite unique. Unique is like this. For us, we love, okay, let me put an analogy like this. When we buy a house, the house is empty. Okay? And at that time, we start filling in the house with furnitures, with decorations, and so on. Along the way, when we go for shopping, we start seeing other things that we believe is beautiful, and we start bringing home, bring back home. And we start filling the nice empty space of our house when we can maneuver and all those. We start putting a lot of things in the house. And until the day when actually there's no space for you to move around because of there's too many objects. They actually have to be very concerned because of, when, kalau tersalah, tersepak kan, dipecah pula. So in the learning process, in instructional design, creating and curating content online is also exactly the same. If you're putting so many things in one page, it's going to become a distraction because of your eyes start juggling up between the essential or the important information with the secondary information. So we have to understand that. So you need to have the white space. Now, in a proper instructional design in online content, white space is actually a premium space, we call it. Why we call them as a premium space? Because of that is the space that actually will create a break between our eyes. So our eyes will be able to take a break. Our eyes will be able to follow the flow of our information, which one is the first, which one is the second, which one is the third. If you look at certain part of our instruction design, we tend to neglect this process and we start putting a lot of elements in. And some of the elements actually unnecessary to be put in. For example, you're putting a very tiny image inside, right? So we do not know what is the function of those images that you need to put in inside there. Does it meant for the student to pick up, to understand that image, or actually it's just an ornamental image that because you feel there is too many white space in your content? That also need to look after. Otherwise, we're creating. Now, the other thing is to break up the content. This is not break up the love, but we love to break up the content. In online learning, it's different from face-to-face. The instructional design is simple. You cannot flood the information in one single page. Sometimes you need to break up the content into different sections. That's why in online learning, if you're doing synchronized online learning, your perception of delivering your lectures cannot be similar with the way how you're doing face-to-face. This happened for the past few weeks. Some lecturers actually conducting synchronous online learning 2 hours through video conferencing because they're expecting that actually 2 hours is exactly the same in delivering the content. Actually, that's wrong. So when you are developing online, when you're delivering the synchronized or asynchronized online learning, you have to understand the concentration of the participant and ourselves. So you need to break up the content. People often make the mistake of cramping all the content in one slide or in one page. And, we deliver the online synchronized online learning exactly like face-to-face 2 hours. Imagine you are sitting in front of the computers, right? doing a video conferencing like this, and you're doing it for 2 hours in front of the student, and you try to replicate. This is where I call it just now the substitution process happen, right? Which actually supposedly you need to redefine the process. Your synchronized video or online course is supposed to be 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes. After that, you need to let the student go and create activity that they have to explore the learning process itself. That is one of the important things. This is what I used to do. When you start use color, you must use color intelligently. This is the tips that very important in online process, right? In instructional design. People said, I'm not a designer. I'm not a creative person. I do not know which color is important, which is not important. But the color process is very simple. Now, saya ambil satu example. Why Facebook only have blue and white? For their Facebook. Facebook is only have blue and white and a shade of blue. Because of blue is the safest color, because of most of colorblind people will be able to see blue color easily. Mark Zuckerberg itself, actually he's a colorblind person, right? So that's why to be safe for him to see what his creation is, he's just introducing Facebook using blue and white. So sometimes using less color is more important because of you will be able to concentrate on creating other important elements rather than thinking about different colors for different purposes. So this is very important in visual design. Because of color also will be able to evoke the appropriate reaction to the student and also to your audience, right? Some people say, can I use a dark background colors? Can I use the subdued background colors? So it depends actually again in how actually the legibility of the font. Now, when we're doing online, instructional design is always saying that never use fancy font in your online course because of screen design is different from printed design. Fancy font that actually curly, such as brush script and all those, that font probably suitable to be used untuk kad jemputan, for wedding card or for anniversary card. But it's not suitable to be used to deliver formal education process like what we do. So use a basic. The other thing is you need to maintain consistency in your instructional design. Content need to be consistent. If the content still in exactly the same subsection, you should not change the size of the font. You should not change the size of the page. You should not embedding different elements which actually can confuse people until they believe that actually you are already moving to a different section. So this is maintaining a consistent that you need to do. Because of in the learning process where actually the independent learning happens, students actually need to learn, most of the time students need to learn by themselves, right? We are at the back of technology, so we are monitoring them. So, we don't want them keep asking you exactly, same question, they do not understand this, they do not understand that, because your focus is in developing a proper content. So consistency is very important. Font usage is very important in instructional design. Make sure that the font throughout the page is similar because it's easy to maintain, right? Single color palette is also important, probably 3 color palette maximum that you can use. That's more than enough. And if you're putting images or you're putting graph or you're putting chart, make sure that all those visual must be in the same level of quality. You don't put it in a different style, because of when you start putting a different style, then your presentation or your content in instruction design start become a bit of childish, right? So be careful with that. And the other one is about focus. This is the last one. You need to make sure that the learners stay focused on what is their main objective. You should not start diverting them into different things. So that's why in instructional design, there's a lot of process that actually happen in curating and developing content in online. One we call it a basic, the other one is intermediate, the other one is advanced. When you're talking about the advanced content curation, this is where actually you start embedding other elements such as gamification, game-based learning. You start embedding different elements into your learning process in the activity. So be careful when you start embedding those, because of the main objective is to make sure that they stay focused into what they do. That's why the instructional design is important. What is the first step that they need to learn? What is the second step that they need to do? What is the third step that actually they need to submit? That is important. That's why you align or you construct everything through a process until to the stage towards the end when they say, okay, in this particular session, I understand that this is what my lecturers want me to do, right? So that is actually the most important thing. So the last word from me, the day when the teachers stop learning, that is the day when the nation start to collapse. Thank you very much. So I pulangkan balik kepada PM Dr. Jariah to moderate.
Okay, thank you Dr. Zulisman for the sharing. Okay, I invite everyone who has need further clarification or elaboration or any question to ask Dr. Zulisman on his opinion. Please unmute your mic, or you may also put in the chat box.
Actually Prof Aizah pun, Dr. Fauzi ada kat sini, tadi Prof dari UTeM pun ada, saya rasa mereka ni pun pakar juga. Saya rasa boleh sama-sama kita bagi opinion ya. Bukan saya seorang.
Ya, boleh. Okay, tu ada soalan yang pertama tu daripada Dr. Harul Anwar. What is the most suitable font for contents in slides?
Okay, now kalau if you look at if we build now, when we building a content through screen design, this is all about screen design. The most safest font that we can use is what we call it sans serif font, not the serif font. Okay, what is the difference between serif font and sans serif font? Let me look at this one. Okay, I'll create another page here. Let me look at. Okay, now the difference between serif font and sans serif font. Okay, now I'll take this one font for example. Okay, this has been categorized as fancy. Okay. The other one is I put another one. This is what we call it sans serif font. And let's say we take another one is serif font. Okay, let me find. Now, anyone using Canva? Boleh saya tanya? I love using Canva. Okay. Okay, this is the difference. Okay. Now, right? Cheers to New Year's. Okay. To the New Year is actually serif, sans serif font. Font does not have tail. We call it. This is what we call it tail. Right. Cheers is actually a fancy font, and usually we don't use this into our online content. It's not suitable. Serif font is actually the one on the right. We call it cold, smooth, and pasty. That is actually a sans serif font that actually does not have tail. In screen design, that is probably the most suitable font, because of when we're talking about font or typographic element rules, there's two things that we need to understand. One we call it is legibility, the other call it is readability. Now, what is the difference between legible and readable? Now, if the font is actually legible means student understand to differentiate between A, B, and C and D, each of the character. Once they legible, when that font actually can be identified, then automatically it will be readable. But if the font is actually not legible, then automatically it will become unreadable. That is the element. Now, this is probably a good example of font that actually sometimes it takes a while to digest. Okay. Save the date, right? Let's say I put it side by side. Okay, save the date. I duplicate this font, but the other side of the font, this one, I change the font into something simpler. Okay. Now, let's put it side by side. Imagine that actually this is your content, whether it's online or whether it's your PowerPoint slide or whatever presentation you have. Now, imagine that actually the student will sit at least 2-3 meters away from this PowerPoint slide. Now, we have to concern about the student that actually sit at the back. Even though this font is smaller in size, this font is actually bigger in size. Our eyes will actually define the one at the right, save the date will be much faster because of each of the character actually is legible. This is what I call it legibility. We know this is S, we know this A, we know this B and E. We understand those process. But once the font become on the left side where S does not look like S, especially from far, right? A and V is already connected, just like our freehand writing. This is actually take a bit of time, even though few seconds to identify, but in terms of the legibility, it's different, right? So this is what it means by the design. So to be safe in online learning, in instructional design, whether it's on your PowerPoint that you want to deliver online, make sure that you are using font that actually sans serif like this, and it should be okay for you. Do I answer that question? Any opinions?
Yeah. Okay, we can understand that. Okay, kita ada soalan lagi in the chat box from Dr. Khairul Anwar.
Okay.
Maybe you could share, Dr. Zul, now sharing, maybe you could share with us some real example of good and not so good practice of content design. For example, slides. Okay.
Now, okay, let me show you once, right? Okay, I have this, for example, I have this content, right? I'll pick up one, right? I'll just pick up one content. Okay, now, I'll replicate this content, ID for online content, item number 4, follow basic course structure, right? So look at this content and I'm going to replicate this content. Okay, this is the first, right? This is the second. Okay, let me change the font. Okay. Right. I'll start changing the way it looks. Okay. Let me find another font. Okay. And then here, right? I'll start changing the color for one. Okay, give the learner assessment. So I change this color, this font to pink. I change this one into green. Okay, I change the learners into blue, right? And then I'm start changing other colors in the line, red. Now, does anyone know that actually red color is actually not suitable to be put on the text? Does anyone know why red color should not be put in the text? What is our assumption when there's a red color in the text? Anybody know? Can I ask?
Angry.
Angry? The other one is wrong. Wrong, isn't it?
Yes. Poisonous.
It's wrong because you mean, oh, this is wrong. Yeah. So imagine this. You have this kind of slide. Okay, let's say we embed image. We want to put image into this. right? Because we want to fill in, right? We want to fill in a lot of things, right? So we put elements. Okay, I want to add elements here. Okay, I want to put, let's say, these teachers here, and it's very small, you know, it doesn't have to be big, you know, the image is very small. Or I want to put a chart. Okay, let me take a chart. This is sometimes that actually we always do. Okay, let me do it. Pernah tak kita tengok bahawa kadang kita letak chart dekat sebelah kita punya PowerPoint slide, and the chart is somewhere here like this. Pernah tak nampak macam ni? Have we seen this kind of slide? Now, one is actually, the title is actually quite destructive using this font. This is probably the bad things that we do. Students not even understand what does it mean. Basic for online content, I can see ID has gone. It become probably 90D, 9D, right? Because the font is not suitable compared to that basic simple thing. Okay, number 4 is still there. Okay. Now look at follow basic cost structure here and this one, because this one is serif font and it's bold, and now the font actually start to connect to each other in terms of the character, right? Imagine that the student actually will stay away far from you. If it's in front of you, it's no problem, but they will see. But the eyes start become fatigued because of the kerning of each of the font is actually start getting closer compared than this one, where actually the kerning of each of the character is nicely spaced, right? Now, in here, we already have a bullet. Now, another one that actually we want to see this one. I always comment about the bullet use. Okay, bullet. Now, when you're talking about points, the most suitable point actually is using bullets in your online content, whether it's your PowerPoint or whether it's in your LMS. Do you know that actually symbol actually can be quite tricky to be used? For example, you put dash. Okay, here you put dash. What does it mean by dash? Dash. Dash is become your point. Dash. What does it mean by dash? What does it mean by points? Right? So we have to be careful with dash when we want to use. This is just a simple dash. Now,
okay, Dr. Zulisman, related to that, there's one sharing here from Dr. Raiham. He said, from my observation in your slide, I can see that you are using full sentence. So does it mean that we have to avoid using incomplete sentences as we did for face-to-face presentation in our online teaching materials? I mean, this related to your current demonstration.
Okay, all right. Now, if you know, when we're doing face-to-face, right? When we're preparing face-to-face content, whether it's PowerPoint slide or whether it's but it's face-to-face, then you should not creating a full sentences, because of that's what you call it PowerPoint. But when you are delivering this content as an independent material, you want the student to read independently. Make sure that the sentence actually must be complete. Right? You cannot simply just put like this. For example, assessment. Follow the basic structure. Number 4 item is actually assessment. That's the point, right? The point is assessment. Now, then it becomes fragmented in terms of the information that the student wants. At least you need to give them a full sentence, right? You need to give them a full sentence. Because by giving them a full sentence, at least the student will be able to read the content by itself, because of you are no longer there, right? But what you need to do, for example, like if it's too long, I have it long here, you start cutting it down into section, point by point. Now, I'm giving this quite long because of this is for the training purposes. Sometimes you cannot avoiding it. But this content usually will be content that I'm putting it into my learning process. Let me show you one example of, I'm creating one. Let me share.
Another point, Hidayah is asking, instruction design, is it just focusing on how we design our content during teaching, and also instruction for activities and assessment, right?
Yeah.
So that means instruction design is not just focusing on how we design our content during teaching, but it's also involve instruction for activities and assessment.
Correct.
And any others additional that we need to consider?
Okay. Now, when we're looking at on the instructional design in the overall courses for online learning, the first thing that, okay, look, does everyone see my content here?
Yes. Okay, this is you are showing your ULearn page, is it?
Yes, I'm sharing my UTeM.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is also being requested by Dr. Wahida.
So let's see now the first thing, as we say just now, when we analyzing the online process, is online learning is actually that the student will actually sit in front of the technology, right? So this content is actually you. Okay, so basically the student actually is not in front of you, but they're in front of the technology. So when you start doing the instructional design, as I said just now, you are not only looking at designing it, but you are looking, the keyword is actually curating it. The first thing, actually, you give impression to the student about what is the process itself is going to do with them. So you give them an impression. Like here, for example, I have the header of my courses. I'm creating a header, a basic simple header, right? Now, even though people say, oh, does it important to have a header on my courses? But actually, this is the first impression of instruction just now. We want the student to know this is basically from the visual, you should at least give an impression to the student what their expectation of what they're going to learn. Or are they going to learn a design? Are they going to learn about engineering courses? Are they going to learn about mathematics courses? Or are they going to learn about non-engineering courses, for example? So this is the first impression. So I'm giving this to my students straight away. Now, the second part actually, on the instructional process, you need to tell the student about the learning outcomes of your courses. This is the overall learning outcome, right, that everybody has. You must explain to the student in details about the learning outcome. What is upon the completion of these courses, what do you expect from the student to do? So this is important. And even sometimes we need to identify each of the taxonomy and also the Bloom's level into that, what kind of level, and we have to explain to the student. And even we give them a bit of synopsis of the courses. This is very important. And even I put announcement, everyday announcement or from time to time announcement. And even because I know everybody is quite shy in front of the camera, but sometimes we have to what you call it, young at age, umur dah 49 tahun macam saya kan, but we need to be young at age lah. Okay. So because we know that the student actually tak pernah jumpa kita, betul tak? Sometimes the student never seen us, so they want to see who's actually that particular lecturer ni yang akan mengajar subjek ni, especially next coming semester khas, bulan Ogos dan juga Oktober. Imagine that there's a new student coming in year 1, Sem 1, and we've been instructed to conduct the content online. And we are shy in front of the video, so we don't want to do the synchronized learning. We want to do the asynchronous learning. So how do you want the student to know who you are? I always tell my, when I do a training, don't be shy in front of the camera. You must, you have to show your character in front of the camera. When you're doing a selfie, make sure that you are alone. You don't need to have somebody at the back because it's quite distracting. Feel comfortable with who you are, even though there's a lot of comment about my photo here, but who cares, isn't it? You are an academician, you have freedoms to do that. And give a bit of introduction who you are, give a bit of impression who you are. This is important. So make sure you have the most beautiful of you, right? And show to the audience that this is you. make them feel comfortable with you, right, in that online learning process. Once you have that, right, I'm giving another instructional to the student that I'm giving them a teaching plan. Now, I always tell the student, please observe the teaching plan. Your teaching plan is a guide for you to prepare your study. Why we need to give a brief description about the teaching plan? Because of student, actually, they don't read the teaching plan. Right? They don't bother about the teaching plan. But the teaching plan in online learning is very important to be embedded in your courses, because of actually then the student will be able to prepare and to expect what kind of learning that they're going to go through week by week, right? And at the same time, I'm giving them a different resources of books that are available online, no problem. Okay, this is instructional design also, and give them a bit of description. And setting up every assessment with instruction and when it's available, so the student will know what to expect actually from the quiz, what to expect actually from the midterm examination, how long does it take, what assignment that actually you need to submit. So all this actually is considered as instructional that you need to give, because of when the student learn by themselves, instruction is very important. That's why we call it instructional design. We are instructing, we are creating instructional, ataupun dipanggil reka bentuk instruksi kita panggil. So we need to do that. And when we jumping into a week lectures, we start creating learning outcome for that particular week. We have to tell the student what they expect from week 1 lecture. Okay? So that's important. And we giving them a bit of description of content in text mode, because some students like to read. Yeah, so don't forget about that. And if there is a video, you can embed the video. For example, like me, I'm lazy to create my own video because of there's so many video available. So I'm just get the permission from this guy and I'm using the video and I embed it into my learning. But this is actually still not a design.
Dr. Zulisman, I have a question here regarding when we are choosing some other resources related to our content.
Yeah.
How can we, what's the best tips to choose which one is suitable to make sure that the flow is synchronous with our, is sync with our online, with our self design?
Okay. Now, yeah, okay. Okay. Now, for example, right, sometimes we don't have time to create our own content, right? Sometimes we don't have time to create our own video. Now, when we are designing online content, actually you don't match that content 100% from your curriculum. Because of that's why kalau if you look at my content here, right, this is actually my first topic. My first topic actually in my teaching plan actually is the definition about what is graphic design. In my slide, actually here, my lecture week 1 slide, actually, it covers the history of actually graphic design in details, right? It's already here. So the student will be able to read in detail. But when I start creating it into what we call it online learning like this, I will not going to cut and paste from my original note. But I'm taking it from other sources. For example, from Wikimedia. Wikimedia actually is the best sources, which is a free sources that you can use under the Creative Commons. Okay, and you can find a lot of resources to Wikimedia if everybody take note. In Wikimedia, let me share you probably Wikimedia. Probably a lot of people using Wikimedia Commons. Now, Wikimedia actually is an open foundation that actually you can use their resources free. It's include the Wikipedia or the definition. Now, just be careful when you're using Wikipedia, because of sometimes information need to be kena tapis juga, takut dia punya fakta salah. You have the Wiktionary that you can find. You say that you want to have a quote that you want to embed it into your learning, then you can have. Even Wikimedia, there's a book, free books that actually you can use for your student. Wiki sources also there. Wikiversity, all the journals that actually free is actually in Wikiversity. We have Wikimedia Commons. This is actually you can have videos or you can have images that actually is free to be used without required licensing. You can have media wiki, Wikimedia in Wikidata, Incubator, and all the, this is actually all the free resources that you can use if you think you don't have time to curate your own content. That's what I always suggest it. Now, the way that I'm constructing it is like this. First, before we start with the content, make sure that you have the learning outcome. That is the normal common process, right? Student will read that. And then give a bit of introduction of your content of that particular week, whether it's the definition, whether it's something that actually talk about the fundamental or the theoretical. Then you can find videos that actually might be related. Now, when you're finding a video that related, probably the video will have like 60%, 70% related to your topic. That is good enough. You don't have to be 100%. Now, when you're creating an online content like this, it's not 100% actually must be exactly the same as in your PowerPoint slide, because online learning is about extension of knowledge that you want to give to the student. For example, in my PowerPoint slide, I don't have this video, right? But I'm embedding this video for my student to go beyond than my notes, for them to understand better about the particular topic. Then only I start creating class activity. The class activity can be related to the video, or it can be related to the text above, or it can be related to my note below. So you need to give a proper instruction on what kind of class activity you want the student to engage to. Even a simple part of the activity that you need to tell the student is about the file size that they want to upload. For example, in number 5, your video, because I want them to create a video presentation, I want them that like this. Your video file must not be more than 10 megabytes, so it can be uploaded into UTeM, because I don't want them to email me the video, because student will start emailing the video. Now, I never restrict my student in terms of tools that they're going to use, because I'm only judging the student, or I'm only assessing the student's content. So they can create any presentation using any tools that are available that they feel comfortable with. So then only they were uploading that into the activity here, right? And usually I will give them a bit of reflection at the end to close this particular topic. I want them to find out today for example, I want to capture their understanding, what actually they have learned to do. So I start putting a forum here, and I want them to discuss what day today. A lot of my students say, today I feel sleepy. But it's okay, you know. So from there, I know that actually this particular content probably is quite boring. So next semester, if I want to redesign this content, I can add probably elements such as other activities, such as playing game that actually related to this, for example. Those kind of things that actually okay. But in terms of that detail, I think I can talk more if we can have chances to go into what we call it curating and creating content in more detail. I can talk that, no problem.
Okay, Dr. Zulisman, I've just read through the few questions in the chat box and sum up. There's a question regarding to how to best what is the best way to highlight or emphasize the point that we want students to understand in our slide. That one. Another one is how to write equation, whether using symbols or using words. And say for example, if we can, because considering our audience is a university students, which is very creative and so on. So is it a curly and stylish form can be will be easily comprehended by them? And also, what is the suitable color, background color?
Okay.
Now, can we bold certain certain point to highlight the importance of the point in our slides?
Okay. Right. Now, the first one is about just now, how to highlight the points, right?
The best way to highlight or emphasize the point.
Emphasize the point. Okay. Now, when we're talking about highlighting or emphasizing the font, whether whether that point is important or not, is actually, the simplest part is just to make sure that that particular point actually is bigger in the size, and you just bold it. right? You don't need to put colors on it. You just need, as normal as we do, right? You just need to bold it, right? Because of bold, no, some lecturers, they like to do the italics. Actually, italic is not meant to highlight things, right? Now, for example, like a simple things that actually you want to emphasize in that is just simple like this, right? This my slide. Okay. Point number 1, I'm highlighting the number here because I want the student to remember. So I put the colors here so people remember this. Point number 1, and I'm highlighting the key point. The key point is only on AD word is analyze, right? So people will understand that is how I'm highlighting. I don't change in terms of the shape or the font. The font is exactly still the same. Is I'm using here is actually aileron regular. It's still the same font throughout, right? I didn't change. But I put bold here because of this is actually the area that I want to highlight is the font. The rest of this is just an elaboration. And this elaboration, even we can simplify if we think is necessary. But in this particular course, I like to put it long because this can be your information. But for the student, probably if they do not, then you can start cutting down all this information. But this is just how I'm highlighting it. There's 3 elements that I'm highlighting. One is the key number 1. I don't use PowerPoint, I don't use bullet, but I use number sometimes because number also can be identified easily. So this number 1, this is the point, and this is the elaboration. Okay, point, this is the point, number 1 of the point. This is the item in the point, and this is the elaboration of those particular points. That's question number 1. Do I answer that? And if you look at it, I don't change anything. I don't change to italic, right? Nothing's italic. It's all in one single. Okay. Question number 2. Can you repeat?
Question number 2 from Cik Fairuz, for an equation, because say for example we are dealing a lot with mathematical equation, is it which one is much better, to write symbols or to use symbols or to write full in words? Equation.
Okay. Now, for mathematical or for programming and all those, I know the challenge for the lecturers is actually how they represent those kind of symbol or equation. Now, for me, there's so many approach in doing it. Some lecturers, they prefer to write it and then they screen capture it and then they embedded it. Okay, some lecturers, they prefer to use latex to be used because most of lecturers, they use latex to do, and they will import those latex and screen capture and putting it. Now in ULearn, actually there is a equation. Kalau dekat ULearn adalah equation punya function tu. You can use in ULearn. Tak silap saya ada equation function. But for me, in equation, because equation can tend to have a bit of curly font, right? Usually equation can, kalau kita tengok dalam textbook pun, dia tak menggunakan serif font. They are using, dia tak gunakan sans serif font. Dia gunakan a sans serif font because of equation is actually quite different. Now, if you want to use a serif font in your equation, whether it's in programming or whether in mathematics, you still can use those equation. I'm suggesting use fonts such as Baskerville, right, or Garamond, because of their serif font, but make sure that the size of this equation bigger than the others, right? Because of serif fonts such as Baskerville or Garamond or Adobe Garamond, they tend to be slightly smaller than the rest of serif font. So if you want to use that as an equation to be written into your document, then you need to make sure that the size is bigger. If you want to write it down, all right, and you want to capture those as an images, make sure that the equation has to be very clearly written using your own handwritten, because I know for me, personally, my handwriting is not good, so that's why I never use handwriting in anything on my online learning, because I have a bad handwriting. But if you have a beautiful handwriting and you know that the student will be able to understand your equation, then you can write it and you can capture it as an images that you can embed it in. that is also no problem. Now, the other part that you can use is actually try to use a third-party plug-in software, such as, for example, like Microsoft Interactive Whiteboard or Explain Everything, because of this actually acting exactly like Whiteboard, which actually you can feel the way how you write, and sometimes student can do that and they can capture itself. For me, the option is so many, but it's nothing wrong to use either one. But the most important thing is make sure that it's legible and it's readable. That is the two important thing in equations. Right? So you don't have to use sans serif. You can use serif, but make sure it's legible and it's readable. The only rule is never use brush script using equation, but you can use Garamond. That's no problem. Sometimes Garamond can be italic or it can be non-italic.
Okay. Another question because our students are university students, is it curly and stylish font? They will comprehend with that.
Okay. Now, this is basically a culture actually. Even though they are university students, right? I know it's a culture. Curly font actually is beautiful. Nobody can deny that actually curly font is beautiful, right? Who do not love this curly font? The question is whether our university student can comprehend or not with this curly font. Now, it's not a matter about whether they can comprehend or not. Whether it's not about their cognitive level. It's all about what we call it the legibility and the readability of the font itself that actually make them effective or not. And the other one actually is the look and the feel. In instructional design, content curation or online content curation actually also need to put consideration about the look and the feel of the content. Now, for example, like you are creating a content for subject or courses such as mathematics, So your header for your PowerPoint is this font, right? So then, the look and feel actually is not correct at that time. Even though probably your student will be able to comprehend, they will understand about what you're putting in, but it's just not appropriate in that sense. In terms of the representation, it's actually not appropriate. Now, because of why? Now, when you start using this curly font, even though the student they are able to comprehend, but it takes time to read this, right? Compare them this. Okay. Now, let me put these two, put it side by side, right? Which one actually capture your eyes better? Which one actually you read better? Which one actually you are able to identify each of the character better? For example, especially this one, the first one, the ID at the bottom here. Now, if I don't show you that this is ID, now what is this one? Can you understand what is that one? Does that look like I or does one look like 9? Right? So that is actually another thing. We cannot mislead the information to the student at the first place. So that is my answers. The student might be able to comprehend, but it's just not appropriate to be used as a presentation. This font is good if you think you want to create wedding card, ataupun birthday card, kad kahwin, begitulah.
Okay. Another straightforward question. Can you suggest the most suitable background color?
Okay. Now, for me, it's like this. The safest background color to any content or any online content development is white. That is probably the safest color. Now, for me, every presentation that I usually use white first, right? I start with white. That's why when we're doing everything, start with white first. Once you know that white is okay for you to use, then that is where actually you start brave enough to use the opposite color of the background. Now look at this background of white. No, okay, tengok ya. This is the last one. Let's say you want to use dark background such as black. And then suddenly you forgotten that your font need to be changed color, and then you use this blue color. Okay, kita tengok. Right. Oops, sorry. Saya tukar tulisan ni menjadi blue. Let's say we go to blue. Okay. What is the difference between this and the first one? In terms of our eyes when we capture. Tenung dulu, stare at the font about a few seconds. Compare then, okay, this one, okay. Yang ni tadi saya tukar balik kepada warna putih. Okay. This is actually where you start looking at. Now, the rule is like this. When you putting blue color on the black background like this, okay, blue and black actually does have exactly the same hue. Our eyes actually, the blue color and the black color, when they travel into your eyes, they are travel exactly in the same speed. So that's why your eyes looking at blue and black, blue and black. This one belum lagi kalau background ini kita tukar warna dia kepada merah. Okay, what you say? Okay, so for me, at the beginners, as a beginners, the safest way when you want to create or curating content online is just use white background first. Or if you think white is too white and you feel that it's too much of white and you want to change the background, you can change the background. Probably you can use slightly lighter gray. That is probably the difference between. But I'm not suggesting you start using a different color. This is what's going to happen if the color is not correctly matched. Now, the blue and the red actually travel exactly in a different direction. Now, if you look at the blue, it seems that the blue dah ada apa tu wash out dekat tepi ni. If you print out this red and blue into a grayscale printer, then you will not be able to see all this text. All will become gray because of the hue of the blue and the red is exactly the same intensity. Right? So the safest for me is like that. Black reverse into white, or probably you use a bit of yellow, even this orange, to make it much better. Instead of orange, you can use yellow pun no problem, tetapi yellow boleh digunakan jika ianya adalah totally solid black color. Now, avoid using background. Okay, avoid using background that actually there's so many patterns on your online content, whether it's your slide or whether your LMS. Avoid using all those patterns. Now, what pattern mean? Okay, for example, some lecturers love doing this. Dia ada gambar. Okay, let's say we put background. Right? Okay, kita ambil satu background. Okay, right? I want to change the background. There are so many beautiful background around. Right? I know there's so many beautiful background that we can use. Suddenly we put bang background, right? Wow, you know, there's so many background. Okay. Never ever use this kind of style for any presentation or any online content, because of it's just ruin the whole idea and the whole objective that actually your content must be delivered effectively. Looks beautiful, but actually it's not functional. Okay.
Okay, very interesting background over there. Okay. There's one question here. Since we use ID lesson, how we track a progress in percent of students who undergo or took our ID learning?
Okay. Now, there is no mechanism that we use usually in terms of whether our instructional design is actually effective or not, right? But there are so many ways of assessing it, right? That's why if you look at our online learning, usually what we do is at the end of our courses, we try to get some reflection to our student. Now, every submission that the students submit from our online learning, right, that is actually considered as a reflection whether your ID is actually correctly or properly being designed. Self-reflection from the student is also another tool that you can use whether they are be able to capture whether the instructional of your content is correct or not. Right? That's why you need a step that you can do. Step 1 is what, step number 2 is what, step number 3 is what, and step number 4 is what. If you look at all my content here, all is actually following exactly the same step, right? Even though there's long, some of them, but I'm following exactly the same step. There is no step that actually I'm jumping around, where actually the learning outcome is at the bottom, introduction is at the bottom, and the first video. No, I'm doing exactly the same because I want the student to get familiar with style. Now, in terms of evaluating whether it's effective or not, that depend on the courses that you are under, that you are actually teaching and the student undertaking. For example, okay, I give this example for the one of the mathematics. When I remember I received this question from Sedar, sekolah Datuk Abdul Rahman di Seremban, waktu saya ajar diorang tentang constructing soalan mathematics. The teacher asked me the question about how actually to introduce the student into nisbah dan kadaran. Nama topik itu matematik tahun 4 ke tahun 5 tak silap saya, if I'm not mistaken. And the topic is actually nisbah dan kadaran. So the teachers actually asking me, how do I create an effective instructional design for the student to be able to understand the definition of nisbah and kadaran. Okay, so then what my question to them is like this: how usually you teach the student? So the teacher said, usually what I do, I will go to the whiteboard, I will start introducing a set numbers of nisbah. Nisbah ada banyak-banyak nisbah, 1/2, 1/4, 1/3. I draw a pie chart, I'm start dividing it, and then I'm start introducing the student into, okay, what is actually 1/4 daripada 4 bahagian, for example. That's how actually the teachers do. So then from there, the student need to practice through their activity books. So when I ask them a question, can the student understand or not the fundamental behind of nisbah and kadaran? And the teacher said actually some student will be able to pick up and some student will take times to understand why 1/4 itu datangnya daripada 1 daripada 4 bahagian. Okay, then what I do to them is that, okay, can we create an activity that actually very close nature to the student? So this is how I start with that content. Instead of on your online content, you introducing a pie chart, you divide gambar bulat, you divide pada 4, lepas tu you cabut 1 dan dia jadi nisbah dan kadaran. Okay, for example like this. Okay. So the lecturers masuk dalam tu, dia introduce macam ni lah. Right? They introduce this. Okay, this is how actually they introduce. Okay, let me take pie chart 1. Okay, I'm giving example, right? Chart, see all of the chart. Okay, usually when we tell the student about the chart, it's actually like this. Okay, nisbah dan kadaran, 1/4, for example. So we remove the auto yang ni, kita lebih pada ni lah. So kita buang ni 1. Okay, 1/4, right? This is what we do. So we tell the student the item number 1 is actually 1/4 daripada total 4. Right? Ini adalah 1/4 daripada total. This is how actually the teachers teach. So then I told them, okay, in online learning, when actually we want to give the student understanding about what does it mean by nisbah dan kadaran itu tadi, why not we get some topic that actually very close to them. So we create a story. This is how actually we want to build the effectiveness. Because experiential learning is very important in online learning, right? Okay, so I told them like this. Okay, why don't we create a story like this? Okay, so I give them text, right? Kita type text dulu, tak apa, right? We give them proper instruction. So I told them like this. Ahmad is celebrating his birthday next week. Okay, kita bagi cerita. Okay, his mother planned to bake a birthday cake. Okay, Ahmad planned to invite 7 of his friends to come to celebrate with him. Ini adalah ceritanya yang saya buat. I ask them to create a story. Okay. Now, so kat sini ditulis adalah his mother decided to bake a 1 kg birthday cake. Okay. So rupa dia adalah kek tu bulat lah. So kita kata kek tu bulat. Right? Now, so, dalam cerita tu, soalan dia yang kita akan bagi adalah macam mana on the day of Ahmad celebrating ni tadi, okay, each of dia punya kawan, number 1, how his macam mana tadi kata, contoh kita kata, how the cake can be divided 1/4 equally to his friend, right? 1/4 equally 1/4 to his friend. Macam mana kita nak divide that cake? Kita kata supaya each of the student tadi, each of the kawan dia tadi dapat 1/4 daripada bulatan tadi tu, daripada equal tadi. Everybody will get 1/4 tadi tu. Okay, yang ni tadi. So how actually they get 1/4? How actually Ahmad will be able to divide the cake? Ada 7 orang, 7 of them, right? Including Ahmad will be 8. So everybody will get 1/4 equally of this cake. Right? So we give that instruction. Okay. So at the same time, actually, we are not only providing the student with the understanding of what does it mean by 1/4, but also we give them another higher order thinking skill for them to think of how actually these 8 people, including Ahmad, will get 1/4 daripada kek yang bulat ni tadi 1 kilo tadi. That's one. Okay, this is how actually we looking at how effective is this, that actually we are extending the knowledge of the student. We are not only giving what is in the textbook, but we also embedding the higher order thinking skill to the student. Itu satu.
Okay. So meaning that when we have effectively, I mean our instructional design is effective for learning, the feedback of the student will be much better and they can learn much more, and it tends to give an experiential learning to the students.
Correct.
Okay. Right. Okay. So any other questions? I think I've covered all the question in the chat box, but it's already 12 o'clock. So any last question? Dr. Zulisman, can you sum up your making a conclusion to this session?
Right. Okay. Now, for me, right, to be an instructional designer, it's not difficult. Okay. It is not what we call it a skill that you need to formally acquire. It comes naturally, but what you need is actually to look at yourself as someone who actually willing to learn, willing to understand the scenario. That's important for me, because of understanding a scenario is more important than understanding ourselves. Now, always remember this. You are talking to a student, you are not talking to your peers, right? So everything that you do, you must put yourself into their shoes. Not every student will understand the instruction that you give. So make sure that you must put yourself in their situation. Bahawa kadang ada pelajar kita yang daripada sekolah di mana proses of spoon feeding berlaku. So you need to change that paradigm. In ourselves also, we need to change the paradigm that online delivery learning actually requires you to work more behind the scene. You cannot simply take your PowerPoint slide that that just have point and point and point, and you're expecting them to understand what you say. That's why sometimes you need to expanding a bit of your PowerPoint slide to give them understanding, and also at the same time you must give the learning responsibility back to the student. That is our responsibility in the higher education. For me, at the end of the day, when you stop learning, that is actually we ourselves creating what we call it, as I said, the day when the teachers stop learning, when we stop learning, that is the day when the nation start to collapse, because of our new generation might not be able to, to get what we teach. So at the end of the day, pertama sekali yang penting adalah kita sendiri sebagai lecturer, kita kena belajar. We keep learning. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Zulisman. It is indeed a very an eye-opener sharing from the perspective of instructional design for us to learn more on how to design our content delivery through this online mode. And I'm sure that from your sharing just now, as well as from the continuity support from PSTP, JKICT, as well as CAES as well, we are going to perform and doing much better in trying to fulfill our responsibility during this new mode or new norm. Okay, so thank you everyone as well for joining us. And later, Dr. Zulisman will also have another session with us at CAES on this 5th June regarding on online final exam guideline and procedure. So be with us. And also, I would like to remind and invite everyone to join us again tomorrow, because we have a session for online learning fundamentals and strategies ensuring effective learning from Professor Dr. Abdul Karim Alias from USM. On 5th June, on Friday, from Dr. Zulisman and Encik Shahizam bin Amin from BPA on the online final exam. On 8th June, we have strategies to empower students remote learning from Professor Dr. Rosna Awang Hashim from UTeM. So I hope with all these series, CAES is organizing with the support of other PSTP and other centers from Deputy Vice Chancellor Office. We are helping each other to support each other to teach much better. Okay, so they'll keep on learning to ensure that our nation is not started to falling, as Dr. Zulisman shared just now. Okay, thank you everyone, and hope to join you. I hope everyone will join the next session, inshallah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I'll talk about the online assessment also, the final assessment, not only final exam, but I will also talk about the final assessment for continuous assessment on Friday. No problem. Please join.
Okay, inshallah. See you on Friday, Dr. Zulisman.
Thank you.
Inshallah.
Sekejap.
Boleh.
Boleh?
Boleh. Prof Faizal ya? Prof Faizal ke? Okay. Dah boleh settle dah masalah speaker.
Okay, maybe ada some word, Okay, Zul, maybe you can share what is the way forward from director of PSTP. Maybe some view or some tips for our lecturer to survive, to reduce their stress in the remote punya teaching and learning. Maybe from director.
Okay. Sebenarnya, actually, right, when we're talking about surviving in this pandemic, or even I heard that next year, even KPT also encouraging that 60% of our courses need to be conducted online. So for me, semester 2 is actually considered as our training ground, our trial and errors. But we also need to prepare for our semester half and also October intake nanti. Jadi apa yang saya akan cuba support macam ni. Okay, my door is always open to everyone, whether it's personal, whether it's through PSTP. PSTP will actually conduct another what we call instructional design, iaitu technological pedagogy training very soon. Please join me. The other one is that I tadi dekat chatting pun saya ada letak saya punya WhatsApp number and also my email. If you have any specific requirement from faculties, please do not hesitate to call me. And if you think personally you want me to come to the faculty to give a training, I will do so. Even on the 8th, if I'm not mistaken, next week, walaupun kita cuti agung, tetapi tidak selesai on the 8th, sebenarnya saya dijemput oleh PBBI untuk buat training yang sebegini yang dipanggil PTG, pembelajaran teradu gantian. Hopefully other faculties or any individual who want to learn personally regarding about how to design content, how not to be stressful and all those, please do not hesitate to call me. Now, my approach in technological pedagogy is very simple. I don't go to a complicated methods. I never push into the boundaries where actually we don't have times. That's why kalau siapa yang tengok saya punya online courses tu, saya buat cut and paste saja banyak kerana dalam keadaan macam ni, so later on you will be ready. But what I can say is that I'm always here. I'm happy to help. Tak ada bayaran pun, don't worry. Anytime, wherever you want, just do not hesitate to contact me lah. Okay.